Yo, I'm Brendan, and today I'm going to tell you exactly how to make a dividend tracking spreadsheet. We're going to go step by step so you can follow along and do this exactly like you want it to be. I'll give you the whole breakdown of how I do it so you can make it as we go along in this video. Feel free to change things if you want, add things, subtract things, whatever you want. But by the end of this video, you will have a dividend tracking spreadsheet. It's going to tell you how much money you get in dividends every single month, what your returns are. And if you want to, you can even do a little chart at the back end like I do, so it gives you, a pretty picture of your returns. So first I'll show you what exactly we're going for, and then we're going to make it together. So up here at the top, what I like to have is sort of a title bar area. And what this is giving me is an overall picture of what I have going on. And so this whole first section in the top left is all about contributions. Not only is it setting up the rest of the chart, but it's giving me the total amount I've contributed to the account overall, just because sometimes that's not easy to see in whatever your investing app of your choice is. Then the middle section here is all about the dividends. How much money I'm getting in dividends is below this, but the total number of dividends I've gotten is right here at the top too. So it's the overall picture. At a glance, this is stuff that's visible at all times. And then right here in the top right corner, the very last thing that I show is my overall running dividend return. And it's a very simple thing. All I've done is take the amount that I've contributed divided by the total dividends I've gotten. So strictly like my cash dividend return situation, that's what it's telling me right there. Just because I'm curious to know how well have my dividends performed as dividends. That obviously doesn't include the value of the dividend ETF or stock going up on its own, like the capital appreciation of the thing. This is just the income that has been produced. This is my income number. And you can see that top bar has like a line separating it from the rest of the graph below that because those cells are frozen. So you see, as I scroll, they don't move. Everything up there at the very top remains as it is, no matter how far down I scroll. I personally like that setup because I like to see that format of everything at the top all the time. So we're going to build it this way. If you don't want to do it, just don't freeze those cells. Pretty easy. So if you're going to do this with me, you open a brand new Google Sheets sheet like this, and you start with basically nothing. And so if we want to give ourselves a similar amount of headroom there at the very, very top, then what I'm going to do is go to View, Freeze, and if I do 2 rows of freezing, then that's probably enough to see what we want to see. But I think on my last one that I had those first 3 rows, and I kind of like that, just if nothing else to give us a little bit more space. So if you want to do that, you just click on the row number 3, so you can see that little number 3 and then the whole row is highlighted. Then you go to View, Freeze, and it'll go up to row 3. So by default, it'll do either no freezing, 1 row, 2 rows, or the last option there gives you the option to freeze it all the way down to whatever the row is you have selected. So in our case, up to row number 3, all we need, boom. So now no matter how much we scroll, we can still see pumpkins up there at the top. Pretty cool. So in our case for a title, I'd like this first very far left kind of box to say date, because that's what we're going to put in here is the actual month of whenever we got this dividend. So what I did to do that was just to highlight both of those cells. Then I hit this little symbol here that merges them together. So you're taking 2 and turning them into just 1 cell. And then I wrote date in, but I don't like that it's just sloughed off down there at the bottom left-hand corner. So I'm going to center the text left to right. Then I'm going to vertically align it in the middle. That looks a little bit more like a real title to me. The next thing I want to do is to make this text stand out a little bit more like a true title. So we're going to bold it. Looks a little bit better. We're going to make it a little bit bigger. Not too bad. 1 more bigger, 2 more bigger. All right, size 14 is not bad. And then I personally like to change the font because it looks to me more like something that I have built. Right when I look at something and I see it's got one of these 2 or 3 fonts that I like, I go, this is my thing. I've built it. I own this. It's not like I stole it from somebody else. So I really like this Oswald font. I think it's pretty cool. And you can see it's changed. There's Oswald. Here's default Aria. So the letters are a little bit more vertical up and down, kind of stretched out. It's like how good I wish my handwriting was. And then if we like that, what we can do is take this same kind of formatting and put it across basically the whole spreadsheet. And I don't want everything to look like a title, but I want everything to have Oswald font. So what I'm gonna do is click on this little blank box at the very top left corner above the 1 and next to the A. If I click on that, it'll select the whole spreadsheet. Then I can go into the fonts again and hit Oswald. So now everything in the whole sheet will be Oswald. It won't all be size 14 and bold, but not everything's a title. Then the last thing I like to do on this title kind of block, if you look back at my dividend tracker, it's pretty obvious that contributions and dividends are the main headings, if you will, that then dictate the information below them. So what that looks like to add that is just to click on this background fill color and pick something that's contrasty enough that you can still read your text color. In this case, mine is black, but also dark enough that it stands out from the rest of the background. So in my case, I chose this kind of light grayish color. I like that. And then what we're going to do is make our next contributions tab. So I think the next 4 cells together should be merged. Then I'm going to do a copy and paste of the format of this date. So if I select the date cell and I hit this little paint roller, I can do paint format and then click that next box, and it's going to look exactly the same because I want my titles to all be nice and neat and look the same together. And this is our contributions area. So what this is going to do is give us the ability to track whatever money we're putting in each month into this account. Because for me, I want that to be separate than the kind of money that's in there overall or the kind of money that's coming from dividends. I want to know how much did I put in each month at every kind of interval. I want to be able to see that really clearly. And then if we want to mimic my last spreadsheet, or even maybe make this one cleaner than my last spreadsheet, we can do something similar and copy and paste the formatting of this date again, put it right here next to contributions and call it something like total contributions. Then the box next to that can have the same formatting again, but this is going to be formatted as money. So I'll just click this little money symbol. Then we'll know this is going to be all the money that we contributed to the account. And we'll put all the formulas in and things to make this work here in just a little bit too. So don't worry about that part. Then the next section we want to have is our actual dividends themselves. So what I like to do is not necessarily cram everything together all in one line. I like to give it a little bit of space, but what we can do to tighten everything up and make it potentially easier to view on mobile and things like that is shrink down our column size. So like it can grab this little handle, push it over and make this F column a little bit smaller. Same thing with contributions. We don't need it to be quite that big. So you can just manually drag them over like that. You could also just click on it and select it and do resize column, which is definitely an option, but then you have to type in a specific number. So it's like, oh, there's 100. What do I want it to be? 86? Like, I don't know. So I kind of do it like visually this way, and then I can see how it's going to be shaping up overall visually also. Then whenever I'm tracking my dividends, I've got one column with the actual date that I got the dividend specifically in it. I've got the ticker symbol itself, and then I have the amount of the dividend. Do you need to do all of this? Probably not. Like, I don't think it's actual value add that I know the specific calendar day that this happened. It doesn't change anything for me. If anything, it just validates that yes, that did happen in the month of March, if that's what we're talking about. But inherently, if it's in this area of our tracker sheet, it should have happened in that month. So I don't know that you need to replicate that. If you want to, you totally can. But I think for this new and improved version of my tracking spreadsheet, we're going to leave it out. So I want to copy and paste the formatting of our contributions title here and put it one gap over, because this is going to be the total number of money that we've contributed. It's going to auto populate for us. Then this one here is going to be our dividends. And you know what? I think what's going to look better is if we move that up one. So let's do a Control Z, or if you're on Mac, Command Z, a couple of times to undo that. We're going to recopy the contributions again and put it at the top of our 3 bars that we've frozen up here. Because what I want this to do is then give us space underneath that to separate out and say ticker symbol, dividend amount. I just think that's going to be a little more informative, a little bit cleaner. It's going to look nice. I'm into it. And actually, I might switch this over going forward and make this my new dividend tracker because I really like it. I like how this is shaping up. Okay, so we've got the date, essentially the month, the contributions that we made, the total contributions that we've made overall of the course of all time, our dividends, the tracker, and the dividend amount. Now we need the rest of our kind of totals over here on the side. So these other two that I hadn't had highlighted here, let me give them a little bit of background color so they stand out a little bit better. This period return is a thing that I like to track, which is essentially saying what's the percentage return from this month. I also like to track yearly return at this current rate. So if every month of the year was like this month, what would my return be? And this other number that I don't even have labeled on mine that I really should, let me copy and paste some formatting here and make this in here, is total dividends this month, essentially. Or maybe you could put in monthly dividends or whatever you like to label that. So what we're gonna do is kind of copy and paste this. I like that vibe. I'm gonna do a paste format again from date. We're going to put it right here next to our dividends and say total monthly dividend, and then it's way too big of a font. So we're going to shrink that down. And now it's way too small. Let's make it bigger. If you're seeing that what's happening here is like a text overrun, I can't see everything in this box that I want to see. Don't forget that you can do this, which is called text wrapping. We click this middle one, say wrap, and now it's going to force that text to kind of be on top of itself and maybe even grow the box a little bit if it needs to make sure that everything fits. So we've got a spot for total monthly dividends. I dig it. Then we can do a this period return and a yearly return at current rate. So I'm actually going to do copying and pasting the format 2 more times here. This month's return, yearly return at this rate. And then let's do a similar thing and say overall running dividend return up here at the very top. But what I want to do now to make it a little bit clearer is to space that out. So I'm going to give this a little bit of a smaller width of a column. Then we're going to copy and paste this format again and say overall dividend return. And in a similar way, we can copy and paste our money format box right here next to total contributions. And actually, it's not a money format. It should be a percentage format. So we'll hit percentage as an automatic formatting tool right here. Format as %. Easy. Cool. So we have a very clean setup here to get started, cleaner than my existing dividend spreadsheet, I'd say. And this is not uncommon for me to see this in my own life, that the first time we try and make something like a quick and dirty dividend spreadsheet, a little messy, a little cluttered, the formatting's not great. And the second time around, third time around, fourth time around, it gets better and better and better, and you tailor it more and more to what you need. So I feel like that's happening here. This is a much better spreadsheet than the current one I have. So I'm excited to do this with you. Hold on one moment so I can get a glass of water. And we're back. Nowhere safe to put that cup of water around all my electronics. Scary. But what's not scary is tracking our dividends. So let's keep going here. You notice whenever I very first started mine, I started 1 month, put some money into it, nothing happened. Because it takes a month or 3 or 4 to get your first dividends. So initially the first little time period here is going to be like 1 row wide. It's not going to be telling you anything. Maybe even for the first few months, it's going to be like that. And then once you get into it, you're going to have more things happening in terms of dividends. But what I think would be ideal is having consistent formatting all the way across, just because why break it up and make it confusing? Let's make it really consistent. So what I want to see here is our first month and year combo to say, let's say it's January 2025. And now that I'm seeing this, we really don't need there to be 2 different cells that are doing this contribution job. I think if anything, we can either merge all of these cells underneath it so that it matches this one that's merged, which is a viable option. Or we can actually come in here and delete 1 column and then just widen out B to make it a little bit wider. I want it to fit the text nicely, but we don't need like a ton of space to put in here. Oh, I put in $100. It's just wasted space. So let's do that. Let's straighten everything out. And I think for most of this, we don't have any reason to do anything but center it. So on at least all of these columns here, I want everything to be centered. And so to do that, I can click on column A. It's going to highlight that whole column, then come all the way across to, I guess everything. M, hold down the shift button, left click on the M, everything is highlighted. And I'm going to go ahead and center all the text. So I like that. Now the next thing I want to do is format the certain areas to be dollar amounts because they are. So let's say in January 2025, you get started, you contribute $100, but it doesn't say $100. It just says 100. That's not cool. So if I highlight the whole column of B, even though there's some words in there, some text, it's not clearly a number that's going to be formatted like dollars, we can still hit this little dollar format as currency type of deal because it's not going to change that and make it all of a sudden like contributions dollars. It's only going to change any of the numbers. So we'll hit that. Then you notice by default, it shows us the cents too, like dollars and cents. You do you here. If you really want to have everything down to the penny, by all means show that. I personally don't care to see that, like just round it up to the next dollar. It's not going to change anything if it's $100 and 1 penny. So for me, I click this decrease decimal places option while that whole column is still highlighted. Because what it should do, I don't know if it's going to work totally or not, but it should in theory decrease the decimal places on all of that. So if I click it twice, boom, boom, now we're down to $100 rounded. But even if you put in here $100.40, it's only going to round it for you. If you do $100.51, it's going to round up for you. It does that work. Then what we want to do is reflect all the contributions we make for the rest of all of our lives in this box here. Because at a glance, it'd be really cool at the very top to say, how much have I put in that's actually my dollars? Because what's going to happen over time, I've done this for almost 2 years now, there becomes a lovely, wonderful gap between the amount of money that you put in as a dividend investor and the amount of money that is actually in the account, because you've made money in dividends, right? The total dividends you've made has gone up. And actually, I'm missing that in my spot here, because look, this says total dividends on my spreadsheet. I don't have a spot for that on the new one. Let's make a spot for that too. Let's take this one and make it into total dividends. Actually, it'll be wise if we just copy and pasted this. So we'll highlight both of those cells, Control C, Control V, boom. We change this first one to total dividends. Typing's hard. And that way, this is going to be our number for total dividends. This is going to be our overall dividend return in terms of percentage. So what I want to do is make sure that's really clear to myself. I can highlight both of those cells, click on the little border box, and then click on this one here to add a border around everything I have selected. 1 line around the full outside so that it's going to look like that at the end. It's very clear. These two go together. I'll do the same thing over here, add the border all the way around, and it's okay. This is one number, that's a different number, even though there's no gap in between them. Make it clear. All right, so now what we need to do is our first formula, because what we want to have this box do is auto update all the money we've contributed. So we're gonna hit equal sign after we've clicked into that box. Then we're gonna do sum, which is saying add up a series of cells, open parentheses, because we're going to do a whole bunch of cells. And then what I want to do is literally start right under contributions and just drag it down. You can click on your mouse and drag it. You can also type in a number manually, because like this will work to where I can just click and drag and then hit enter and be done. But also if you didn't have that, you could do equals sum B4, which is that first box. You can see it highlights in orange whenever we first do that, colon, which is saying B4 through something. We're going to fill that out. B4 through B 200. Pick a number that's so big, you're not going to run out of space. You'd have to have a lot of different months of dividends in here to run out of space for that. And then there we go. We get the number. For some reason, I don't like the fact that this is as bold of a number as my other title here. So I'm going to debold this because I want that to be a little bit more clear. Maybe I put a border around the outside too. Okay. I kind of wish it said total contributions, but we don't have enough space for that. So I wonder if that's good enough. Part of the process of making a custom spreadsheet like this is we just look back and we say, do we like the way this is looking or not? Do we need to change something? Is it annoying? I really wish it didn't say total con. I wish it said total contrib or something like that. So this way I know what that number means. Maybe I'll I'll shrink it down. I'll wrap it. I guess I like that a little bit better. I'll leave it at that for right now. I basically shrunk the text down. I did wrapping text. I think it's okay. It's passable. And then just to test our presumption that this is going to work here, how about February 2025? We come in and put in another $100. There we go. Auto updating. March 2025, $300. There we go. Now, one thing I do want to do is also round this down, because even though these numbers are rounded down under contributions, it doesn't mean that everything else that's tied to that is rounded down. This is a separate box. So we need to tell Google Sheets, I was going to say Excel, you need to tell Google Sheets also to round this down. Decrease decimal percentage. Boom. That's what I want to see. All right. So our contribution section is largely done. If you're going to contribute multiple times in a month, you can do that and just space these out a little bit more. Maybe in January of 2025, you put in $100 on one day, then you put in $100 on another day, and $100 on another day, and then I would just wait and start the next month well below that. So it's clear all of these happened in January, not in the next month. The other option you have for this is to literally space it out by day. So you could say January 1st, 2025, I put in $100. Then January 10th, 2025, you put in another $100. And January 20th, 2025, you put in another $100. Because at least that way, it's very specific to you. If you want to be that specific, then if you wanted to, you could also correlate these dates to be the dates you got your dividends. If not, that could be kind of confusing. Like if you did January 10th here for a contribution and in the same row, you also got a dividend for something. Did that happen on January 10th or not? It's a little bit muddy there. And again, I don't know that adds any value to your life to know the exact time and date that you either got a dividend or you contributed to your account. It doesn't seem to add a ton of value to me to know everything that specifically. So I like to leave it broken into like a monthly chunk. The month of January, how much did I contribute? The month of January, how many dividends did I get? To me, that makes the most sense. You can build this however you want. And even this, you could keep it to one row of contributions, even if you had multiple days of contributions. You don't have to use up extra rows to do it like this. You can just come up to this first one and say equals 100. You put money in there on January 1st. Maybe you come back on January 10th, you reopen your spreadsheet, you go, oh, I actually put in another 100. So then you come up to the end of your 100 number here, plus 100 again. Boom. Now we're at 200. You've only taken up one row, but I like doing it this way because you actually have a record of each chunk that you put in there. So I will intentionally format things like this sometimes so it doesn't just say 300. It actually says 100 plus 100 plus 100, because then it's like a little Easter egg hidden in there for me to remember, oh, I put in $300 total, but in $100 chunks, at 3 different times. That's my nerdy kind of process, my nerdy little note to myself in how I'm building this. I think it can be worth doing for you if you can remember that. But, this kind of like crafting your own system for something is a highly personal thing. So if you don't like it, skip it. Then I like the way that this date is looking as far as formatting goes. So I'm going to go ahead and paint this format, click and drag under January, and then just drag it all the way down to, again, let's say 200, some number that's so big, we're not going to worry about ever running out of space. Then you can see February is going to look really nice. You can type it in with letters and have it look good. I wonder what happens if I type it in with numbers. Does the same thing. 3 of 2025 is the same as Mar 2025. I like how that's looking. Then for me, whenever we get to the dividend side, this is an exciting chunk right here in the middle. All these dividend related things. I don't do any special formatting for the ticker symbol because to me, it's just letters. Let's say I've invested in Altria and I got a dividend, it's MO, or if I get an SCHD dividend or whatever, to me, that's good enough formatting. There's nothing I really need to do there that's anything too specific as far as changing the way it looks, I guess. But the dividend amount needs to be in dollars. This is one area that I don't mind the dollars and cents. Maybe it's me just being miserly. I want to see the evidence of every single cent that I get. But you notice I've left it with the decimal places in my own dividend tracker. To me, it just feels a little bit better and more precise, but you do you. For this dividend deal, I want all of these to also be formatted as dollars. So I'm going to click this first one. So I've got that cell highlighted. I'll scroll down to somewhere, infinitely far down below, hit shift, hit left click, and then I'll do format as currency. So then any dollar amount we put in here, 345, well, 3.45. I haven't gotten a $345 single dividend from a single stock. You could, you just have to have a lot of it. Then it's going to be formatted as money properly, just like that. Boom. Okay, I'm liking that. Here, we'll leave that in there as a test. Then this total monthly dividends number isn't, added up for each line. It's really meant to be the total number of dividends you got for this month. And so what this needs to do is for me to logic it out and to see it for what it is, it needs to be a line below your whole stack of dividends you've received. So it needs to be something like you give yourself enough space here in the middle to input all the dividends that you've gotten that month. For me in my chart, this is about as much space as I need. That's 14 different rows, 15 different rows that I have enough space to actually see that. And then total is over here off to the side. I think it would be nice if it was like one line below that because it almost looks like a receipt where you have like all the things you've bought in a line. Then the next line below that is the actual total. I don't want it in line with those, but I want it off to the right because I think that makes sense. So right now, if all we've got is 2 dividend stocks, the most we could ever get is 2, then I could put this total here. If you want to, you could format it equally all the way down because maybe you want to end up with 10 or 15 different dividend stocks. You want to give yourself that space now. You could just count and give yourself that space and put it down there below now. So if we do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, then that would be the most we would expect to get in terms of dividends all the way down here. Then you could have this be the total of this month's dividends. And so that formula would be equals sum, open parentheses again, and then we just highlight all of the cells in question. For this case, it's cells 5 through 19, close parentheses, and then that's totaled it up for us. So at a glance, you could have this all full of different dividend amounts, and then you could know really easily, not only is it a separate column, it's also one line below that our tally of dividends has officially ended. Now we're talking about the total dividends we got this month. And then for that to just continue with that level of clarity as far as the totals for this month, I would like to align these other kind of totals right here next to this one. So this month's return would be a calculation that I like to do that's essentially the amount of money we got this month divided by the total amount that we've put in there. So to do that, we would say equals, we would do this cell right next to it. That's the total monthly return, H20. Then we'll do divide, the little backslash symbol, and then we can click on the total contribution amount up there. Then if I'd enter, we get this big nasty decimal. We don't want that. We want a percentage instead. So had I only invested $300 and somehow gotten a $36 dividend month, then this month's return alone would be 12.17%, which is crazy town. You'll see how crazy that is here in a minute. Then if I wanted to get a yearly rate at this return rate, this is just for the month. So if I had then 12 months of this, that would be incredible. I'll take that rate, multiply it by 12, again, hit a format, and we're at 146% return. No one's getting dividends this crazy. This is like a crazy example. If I delete a bunch of these out, make it a little bit more realistic here, something like this is probably closer to the numbers you would see if you're just getting started. You only have a few $100 in here. Total dividends we got this month, 70 cents. Total return this month, 0.2%. So then if you had a 0.2% every month for 12 months, it'd be something like 2.8%. Yes, this math is not perfectly mathematically correct because it would be actually a much better return than that because your money is growing on money, right? Every month it's compounding on itself. And so your return should be better than just what you got this month in isolation times 12. This is really incorrect, but quick and dirty math for me to get an idea of what does this mean though? Because for me to know a monthly return of 0.23%, well, that doesn't tell me really like how to judge that compared to other ways I could stash my cash. But if I just do a really quick and dirty times 12 months, no, it's not perfectly correct, but it gives me an idea. It gives me a ballpark, right? It's somewhere around 3%. Okay, that's totally fine. I understand if you don't want to have that calculation in your own spreadsheet because it's kind of a goofy thing, but something that, I like to do. So then we've got these last two numbers at the very, very top that we want to go ahead and add up. That's total dividends we've gotten, period, over the history of the lifetime of us tracking this account. That's this one. And then the overall dividend return. So every dividend we've gotten divided by the money we put into the account. So for total dividends, we want to do equals sum, open parentheses again. And then I essentially want to highlight this whole H column. For me, it's H, total monthly dividends. You could also highlight everything in the G column. It's essentially the same thing, but this H column should have less numbers in it. So if anything ever goes wrong, should be less to kind of sort through, I would think. So we could click and highlight it. You can also type it in and say H4 through H200 verifies, with that little orange bar, that's exactly where we want to go. Close the parentheses. Boom. So we still have an awkward number here because we totaled up our dividends, but we left it formatted as percentage, and it's really not. It should be formatted as dollars. So I'll just click this little button, turn it back to that, and there we go. 70 cents in total dividends. Now the dividend return is going to be a mix of those kind of two numbers. So if we do equals total dividends we've gotten divided by total contributions, enter, that gives us our overall dividend return. And you notice it's the same right now as this month's return because we've only had 1 month of numbers, but as time goes on, that number is going to change a lot. And again, that math is really kind of imperfect because it's giving us your monthly average rate essentially, and it's based on your contributions. And so it's not necessarily reflecting the whole value of the account, which is probably more accurate, but that's a lot more work to keep that up in here and somehow transfer the balance of your account into some other cell and use that to divide. The way that I look at this, the reason I have this number in there is it's me saying, what is like my internal rate of return, if you will? What is the money I've put into it? What is the return that money in and of itself is getting? And I realize as time goes on, that gets less and less accurate because the more dividends you've gotten, the more they have an impact on the overall growth of your account. In my actual dividend tracker here, I've gotten total dividends of $1,300 at this point. So that extra $1,300 that's in the account that is growing in and of itself, plus the capital appreciation, the price appreciation on each of these things is helping it to potentially grow a little better. It's not really reflected in this number at all. This is just reflecting a kind of personal value of how good my money is replicating itself. You know, this is not a perfect financial mathematical term whatsoever. It's very rough and dirty. It's very at a glance. So let's say this is what we want our setup to be. This is the kind of format we want. This is the thing we're going to follow every single month, assuming you want the same kind of thickness for every single month. We can go ahead and start duplicating this so you can see what it's going to look like. For me and my other dividend tracker, what I like to do is give myself a little horizontal line to divide months, because I think it's just clearer that way. I don't think it's totally necessary. I think you could just use a gap, but I think this way it's a little cleaner and a little bit more obvious what's happened. So what you can do if you want to do that is click on that last row where we have made our total monthly dividends, this month's return, yearly rate at this return type of situation. Click on that so it highlights that whole row. Then we go up to our little border thing again and only click the bottom border. And then that way we've separated the months, if you will, so that whenever we come in here, we want to highlight this and duplicate it for next month. Because let's say, okay, January's done, time for February. I start right here at January 2025. I come down and I highlight everything that we potentially have numbers, affecting this thing. Do Control C, come down right below our line, do Control V. And then I'll change this January to February. Let's say I contributed another $300. Then everything else is sort of auto-populating, if you will. We probably have gotten different dividends this month. So let's pretend like we've updated that. We come down here, our total monthly dividends is still adding up properly, but now we've got errors in this formula. Oh no, dreaded errors. What's happening? Divide parameter 2 cannot be 0. So what have we asked it to do? We've said, can you divide our total monthly dividends from this month divided by some arbitrary cell that's got nothing in it? And the reason we've done that is this formula has just given us a relationship between the location of these two cells. It's not sticking to what we want it to stick to, which is this total contribution number. And here's how we fix that. We go in here, and instead of it sticking to D18, what we want it to do is stick to D2. So to make it stick to this cell that we want, we just have to put in some dollar signs, which is kind of funny. So D2 is the right one. If we do this again, it'll work for now, but the next time we do a copy and paste, it's going to break again. So the way we fix that is we come in here, we click on the actual formula, if you will. Okay, let's slow down. If I click on this spot that we want to change the formula of, which is saying 0.08% right now, we go up to the little formula bar. I click right before the D in D2, and I put in a dollar sign. Then what that's saying is keep the D the same. Make sure that no matter how many copy and pastes you do of this cell in this formula, it's always going to be D. Then if we move over one, we do a dollar sign before the 2, it says keep it D and keep it 2. So now, even if I copy and paste this thing further down, it's still D2. Further down again, across somewhere else, it's all D2. That dollar sign is like clutch. We don't have to do the same thing with this because this one is relating to the cell right next to it. And as long as we highlight and copy and paste the whole chunk of the month, it's going to handle itself. Let's do another test just to make sure. So we'll highlight everything from February down to kind of the bottom right edge of our cell, Control C, Control V, or if you're in Mac, it's Command C and Command V. We'll change that to March. We'll say we put in another $300 because we are clockwork consistent with our contributions here. We'll just pretend like we got dividends again, even though you're not going to get dividends every single month. Then all of our numbers have updated here, and that's pretty cool. Nice. Tell you what, this is working, and it's a lot cleaner than the one I've got going on. Then I've also made this chart on mine, which I feel like is optional, but it's kind of fun to have a chart, a visual representation of what you're doing. And what I have is my yearly return calculated by month. So what this is doing is putting into a chart form, essentially these numbers here, the yearly return at this rate, the at a glance, quick and dirty, kind of goofy number that I picked there to try and represent an annual number for what is this monthly return calculation. You can do this with, of course, any number you want. It doesn't have to be, the exact one that I've chosen here. But if we want to do that, I'll just go through and show you kind of what that looks like. So if we do plus on the bottom left, we're going to add a sheet, totally blank, kind of sucks, so blank. But then what we want to do is give it a nice clean chart to run from. So for me, I've got this one here that I've got the month on one side, the return APY on the other side. Very, very simple. That way, whenever we do a chart from it, it's very clear. The chart has an easy time creating itself. The one thing I don't like is I've got the chart up here and the numbers at the bottom, which, it's kind of a pain when it comes time to update this thing. So what I want to do is actually move that to where the chart's at the top and the numbers at the top. Everything's at the top. Really easy. So we got month, we've got return. In terms of APY, we can center everything. We'll highlight both of these. We'll center it. We'll wrap the text if we need to. We'll center it vertically aligned to. I want everything to still be Oswald. And then I'm going to make these look a little bit more like a title with a little underline, with a little background color, Okay, now it's obvious. And what we're going to have to do is pull our return number from the previous sheet from here because that's the only place it exists. We don't have to pull the month from there too though, because realistically we can just type January 2025 and put that in there, February 2025. You know, that's a format that's close enough that we don't have to worry about pulling it from the previous tab. And then what you can do is you realize we've got this kind of pattern happening here. The chart, the sheet knows that we're doing something that's chronological. It's got a pattern. So if we highlight all of those and then we grab this big kind of dot here at the bottom right and we just drag it down, drag. Let's say we're going to do this for the next 200 months because we're long-term investors. We can drag it all the way down to 200 and let go. And look at that. It's continued that pattern for us. It has duplicated what it sees as a month-by-month pattern. March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October, November, December, January again. If you didn't know about that hack, I hope it just blew your mind a little bit. Then the return is a little bit more complicated. So what we have got to do is pull that number from the previous sheet with enter, click over to the previous sheet, click the number in question that we want, which in this case is at 0.93. We hit enter again, and we've pulled it in there. And you can click on that and see it's pulling it from this sheet called New Fresh Start Div Tracker, which is what I have that named. And within that sheet, it's J20. Then for this next one, we're going to do a similar thing, hit enter and hit the February one. We've gotten the numbers matching up there. And then we'll just keep doing that for the next one down here for March. And we've got our 3 numbers. That's all we've got so far. That's all the data we have to draw from. And so that's what we can make our chart off of so far. Then to do that, I'm just going to highlight what we've essentially done here. We'll just go down to 2030 just to get some time under our belt. That's all highlighted. We're going to do insert on the very top up here, chart. And it's going to sort of start to format that for you in a way that it thinks is going to make sense. Because we've chosen so much time, it's given us a big long time horizon down here on the horizontal axis. It's automatically formatted it for a percentage and it's narrowed it down to between 0 and 1% because that's all of our returns so far. Now the difference is going to be, let's say sometime in the future we get an awesome, 2.5% return. You notice it automatically reformats that number for us so it's going to fit within the boundaries of the chart. We get a couple more 2.5s. Maybe we come down here in April, we get an awesome 4% month, goes up again. Then we're back down to 1%, then it's going to drop back down. And so it's going to constantly shift that chart for us so that it stays within the boundary of our returns. And you can kind of see what's happening overall. I'm not sure doing this with the return is kind of that important. I could see you potentially doing this with the actual amount that you've earned. I think that could be kind of more interesting. Let's build one of those just for fun. So we'll make this monthly dividend. I'm going to copy and paste our starting point here because I don't need to make that again. I'm also going to copy and paste our months because I don't need to do that again. But instead of return APY, I'm going to say monthly dividend, and then we're going to do an enter, go back to our first sheet and do total monthly dividends from this month. We're going to continue that down for each subsequent month. And then we have our 3 monthly dividend totals that we have from the previous area. Then I'm going to go back through and highlight everything again like I did on the first time, just because I don't want to have to necessarily update the boundary of the chart every single time. So I'm just going to highlight a whole bunch of it, insert chart, and there we go. We've got a chart with our totals in there. But I don't want it to look like this, I want it to look like it's got a bar chart going on, because to me that looks a little bit more financial. So if we go into edit chart, right now it's picked a line chart for us. I don't want that. I want a combo chart. That's not bad. Or maybe a column chart. That's basically what we got. And I think I'll leave it right there because to me, I think that's the most interesting view. If in one of these months coming up here, you got some massive $3 dividend month, I think this way it's going to stand out really well to you because, typically what happens is these dividends are paid out quarterly more often than not. And so if you every few months had some big monster one like that, you're going to go, okay, well, that's those quarterly hitters versus the other ones are maybe monthly dividend payments. But that way you can track, whatever you want. You can have your return tracked. You can have your dividends tracked, whatever you want in that kind of visual format. I think now you know how to set it up. If somehow this is your first video seeing this kind of format from me and you've somehow watched it all the way here till the end, then watch this video next because it's like the update for my most recent dividend month where I go through this and I update you on my portfolio, what I bought and sold, how much my returns have been, what my returns kind of overall have been, if it's been worth investing in dividends or not. My dividend portfolio right now, I think is around $35,000. And so it's not putting out no money, but it's also not putting out a lot of money. So that will hopefully shed some light on this world of dividends if you want to get into it a little bit more. Until next time, thanks for watching. See you later. Bye. Also, the secret common word for today is wand. Wingardium Leviosa.